Right. So I am on with David Vance. Thank you for giving me your time today, David. I really do appreciate it. I know you're a busy man.
No, my pleasure. Always very happy to make time for you, Dean. My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. So, with my interviews, as you've probably seen already, I know you've watched a couple. I want to start with your personal journey and your motivation to do what you're doing now. So, how did it all start for you?
Oh, well, like most things in, I'd like to tell you there was a great plan. I had this great strategy, but there was no strategy. But what kind of happened to me was when I was in my mid 30s, which looking back was quite young for me then. I remember getting sort of involved, not in tribal party politics, but I was interested in things like the United Kingdom and trying to make sure that the UK stayed together. Now, I live in Northern Ireland, so I'm slightly to one side, but I ended up becoming the chairman of a group of business people who weren't
Okay.
affiliated, like, but just we were just business people, and the one thing we shared was a love of our country. And
Hmm.
somehow I was about so somehow or another I got from just being a member of this group to becoming the chairman of this group, and then that then led me into party politics, which I was involved in round about 1997 or so. You remember the so-called Good Friday Agreement? That
Yeah. Yeah.
I was involved in that back then. I was
Right.
I was against it, complete. Still am. I oppose it absolutely. Opposed it then, opposed it now. It was a tumultuous. That was back when I started to realize, God, David, you really take a contrarian position on these things, because the world and his wife were in favor of it. You had Tony Blair, Bill Clinton, the world and his wife. But I didn't think it was right. So I got myself involved in that, Dean. I did that for a few years, and I was the sort of deputy leader of UKIP, sort of the Northern Irish version of UKIP. I was the
Right.
deputy leader of that party. Then, come round about 2000, I got disillusioned with party politics, and I started this whole new thing called a blog. And I started a blog, and that blog somehow or another led me into social media. And I joined Twitter, I think back about 2008, 2009. And basically, it then went kind of big. And until I was taken down from Twitter, I was removed and banished back in 2020 because I was a very bad boy about the whole COVID scam. And
Yeah.
yeah, they didn't like that. So along with Katie Hopkins and myself, we were taken down within about a week of each other because of stuff we were saying. And then it came back, uh, Dean, in uh, I didn't even know it'd come back in 2022. A journalist friend of mine phoned me and said, "Hey, David, I see you're back on X." And I went, "What?" And yeah, I am. And so it's been positive growth since then. But in the meantime, I wasn't sort of being sort of just sleeping. I started a podcast, which is
Hmm.
growing. I've got nearly 3 million downloads of my podcasts.
Amazing.
Started that, and then latterly, where we've contact come across each other, I started a Substack
Yeah.
about a year ago as well. So I started that. So I am instinctively someone who likes to do new things and try new stuff. Some of it works, maybe some of it doesn't, but you like to try it. And
A businessman, isn't it? Just try it and see what works and what doesn't.
yeah, yes, you absolutely. So I mean, I've been on, and I have a presence on other platforms like Getter, like Rumble, as well as Facebook. I hardly use Facebook, YouTube, YouTube. But I'm thinking of setting up a new YouTube. I was demonetized and struck down by YouTube again because of my opposition to COVID.
Really.
Really. But I'm thinking of re-energizing that platform as well. But they say you can't keep a good man down, and as I have in the little kind of subtitle to all of my stuff, you'll see I say I will not submit, I will not comply. Well, I will.
Pure blood.
Yeah, pure blood. Yeah, yeah.
That's it.
Thing is, I mean it. I absolutely mean it. You're not going to tell me what to do. Nobody. I mean, that's why I remain, Dean, very, I'm very independent minded. And, I like to say that I'm a Marxist. And people say, what do you mean you're a Marxist? Well, I'm a Groucho Marxist. I'm a Groucho Marxist because I wouldn't want to be in any club that might want to have me. I've got that. natural, I'll rub against the grain up to a point. Now you can be stupid about that, and hopefully I'm not. But yeah, so that's where I am. And now I'm sitting. I'm happy. I do a whole range of different stuff. I scribble stuff in Substack. I put out multiple podcasts every day. I get a decent amount of traction on the old X for laughs, and I'm delighted to do things like this.
Good, thank you. And again, I do appreciate your time today. So I think a few years ago, before I even got into doing anything like this, before the Substack thing, I think I did see quite a few of your posts on one of my old sort of abandoned Twitter accounts. I couldn't even tell you the handle, but it was around about the time of COVID.
Mm.
So I know why I mean, I'm unvaccinated. I was never going to do it. I worked in the healthcare industry at the time. Um, and my thing for me, it was, um, you're not going to tell me what to put in my body. And I remember someone drunkenly saying to me, um, well, they force you to have a COVID jab for COVID. How do you know? And it sounds really stupid in hindsight, but how do you know they won't force you to have, say, cancer treatment,
Mm-hmm.
just in case? And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that sounds stupid. But when you think about it, it's like, I do have an immune system. We've all got an immune system. Yes, COVID was horrendous for some people. For I've had it 3 times, and I didn't know I had it each time. It was only because I had a little cough. So for me, my back, I think it's from being an angry teenager, my back went up and I was like, you ain't going to tell me what to do, especially with something like that. What was it for you with COVID? Was it something along those lines?
Well, do you know the thing about COVID with me? I mean, I vividly remember. Do you remember back in, I think it was March of 2020, and they talked about the super spreaders and whatnot. Remember the super spreader events? And there was
That's it.
two big events in the UK that they focused on. One was, I think, was it a Liverpool international football game? That was one, and the other one was the Cheltenham Gold Cup in that March. Well, guess what? I was at the Cheltenham Gold Cup with my entire family, and uh, and we flew back and we survived it, you know. And then I remember my wife saying to me, she said, "David, this thing about COVID, like, you know, it seems a bit strange. We don't know anyone who's died of it. It doesn't seem to tally up with what they're saying." So, long story short, I from sort of like most other people not being sure what was happening in the March, I remember on the second of April, I have a tweet saying basically. I'm not sure these lockdowns can continue, you know, and from there it went. I went from bad to worse. So oppose the lockdowns, oppose the masks, oppose this notion which you brought up there, Dean, the wicked notion that we have to give up our bodily autonomy because
Mm.
principle you pointed out. If I mean, for years we've had nothing but liberals telling us, you know, bodily autonomy matters. It's the most important thing, and
My
then
body, my choice.
my body, my choice. All of a sudden, not. So what got me was it was all like a slow mo in 2020, and the thing that kind of did for me was I remember again these are it seems innocent when I say it. I went to the garden centre on my own, and I was out in July of 2020, and I was busy garden centre. It was open, but everyone was wearing a mask except me, and I took a selfie of myself. So, you know, and I took a selfie and I put it up on social on Twitter back then and said, "I'm the only person in here without a mask." That was at about 2 o'clock. By 5 o'clock, there was two police officers at my front door wanting to have a chat with me, and they'd picked the wrong guy to have a chat with because they were wanting me. They were basically trying to threaten me. Really, long
Hmm.
short. You know, are you telling other people that they shouldn't wear masks? And I said to them, "Well, I'm just telling you what I think. It's up for to everyone to make their own minds up, isn't it, officers?" And so within a week of that, that's when I was taken off Twitter. So clearly, the name had gone into, you know, Twitter Central, and I was.
Yeah, you're on a watch list.
I don't know what. I'm sure I was been on one before that. I'm definitely sure I'm on one after that, Jane. But you know that. But that was kind of the moment for me. It was that sort of summer of 2020 when I just was like vanished. And I've got to say, you know, if it's happened to you, and especially if you have a, I mean, I had a reasonable profile back then. It feels like death. it's hard. It's like all of a sudden everything's gone.
Hmm.
But then, by the same corollary, in 2022, when I came back, it's I've risen from the dead. You can't give me. So it was a strange couple of years. The whole COVID thing was very. It revealed a lot of things, a lot of truths. I didn't realize most of our fellow citizens will do everything that they're told, and they will impose the will of government on the rest of us who don't want to do it. So
Hmm.
I remember that about it, and that's when I started my podcast and stuff, because again I wanted to get information out there. And I remember Facebook uh, struck me down because I quoted government stats. I quoted the MHRA, and they said this is a strike, and I said, well, I'm only quoting government stats. But now we know how it was all working behind the scenes.
Yeah, of course,
So,
of
so,
course.
so those couple of years, those 2020, 22, 23 years were strange ones. And then, we went straight from COVID to Ukraine. And
Hmm.
then we've gone from Ukraine to authoritarian UK. And all the way along, I just kicked back against it because I see it in particular ways. I always say, Dean, like it's just my point of view. No one has to agree with me, but by the same token, I'll say what I want. If that frustrates or annoys the establishment, so be it.
Yeah. I think the moment for me was, um, I mean, to be fair, I worked in the healthcare system at the time,
Yeah.
and I not buying into it completely, but I was like following the news, like we all were, like, oh, this looks a bit bad,
Yep.
and you start having those thoughts like, is this the end of the world coming or whatever else? Has God
Mhm.
finally struck us down with something? Um,
Yep.
and then for my sins, I was watching BBC News while getting ready for work one morning, and they were showing China, allegedly showing China. I'll say allegedly. Um, and there was people, like, I don't know, maybe 10 people in this town square sort of thing as the camera panned across. And random people were just dropping dead. And I was like, nah, that's crap.
No.
Because the thing that it made me think of, I don't know if you've seen the movie, but Shaun of the Dead, actually, he's on a bus and it goes past this bus stop and a woman drops dead to become a zombie. And I was like, it's very reminiscent of that, like really bad acted,
Mm.
somewhat comical, and this is on BBC News. And that's when for me I was like, I don't buy this now. That looks fake, staged. And obviously everything that's come to the forefront since.
Mm. Mm.
I remember my ward manager saying like, we're gonna have to sack you unless they U-turn. Like and my ward manager, and I'll leave his name out of this because he was,
Mm.
for all his faults, he was a good bloke. Um, he's like, I really respect you do like standing your ground. There's you and one other person, but they're gonna sack you, and you're a really good staff member. The patients like you, you know what I mean? I was
Yeah.
like, I'm not gonna do it. He was like, just book it. That way, if they don't U-turn, you can say, oh, I'm just waiting for my appointment. I was
That's
like,
it. Yeah.
all the time, like job hunting at the same time. But
Yeah.
at that point, everyone like it was part of your job application. Have you had a COVID vaccine? What's that got to do for me working in a pet shop? You know what I mean? What's it matter?
Yeah, yeah, but I think, Dean, it was particularly difficult for people working in healthcare. I mean, I genuinely, I mean, I have friends, I still have, who were in the NHS at senior level, doctors and stuff, and they shared the same views as we're talking about, and they were ducking and dodging because, they couldn't be seen to be come out completely against it, or they would be
That's it.
sacked. But they played a game, the long game, and the long game meant that they got through to 2022 and 23. Then, whenever the sort of the pressure started to lift, but I do feel sorry for anyone working in healthcare. I really do feel sorry for what it must have been like, and a lot of people did lose their jobs as well. We
They
should,
did, yeah.
yeah,
They did. They did. So as you alluded to earlier, we went from people having a profile picture of their mask to I support Ukraine.
right.
Because obviously changing a profile picture on social media makes all the difference.
Makes all the difference. Yeah.
Absolutely. What's your stance on Ukraine, Russia?
Um,
Hot topic as it is.
Good question. Well, I think it's this. I said at the time that I oppose basically wars and the loss of human life. I believe in the sanctity of life. I think this was a controlled set-off, a psyop done by the Obama regime in 2014. That was the real origin of it. and arguably even maybe a year or two before that. And what happened in 2022? I remember the end of 22 when the Russian invaded. I mean, Russia was put in a position where it had to invade because Zelensky back then and others were saying, right, we're going to join NATO. And that's a red line for Russia. Now,
Yeah, of course it is.
should Putin have invaded? Not really. He shouldn't have. But it was the Russian people live in the Donbass, and they were being terrorized. So I just felt that the whole thing was stupid. And I think also by July of 2022, so 3 months in, there was an approximate peace agreement done between, as you know, Ukraine and Russia. And who flew over to stop it? Paging Boris Johnson. Boris, good old globalist Boris, came in and he stopped that. And since then, between then and now, I mean, I don't know how many have lost their lives on both sides, but I would suggest it's well in excess of 1 million. And so I just think it's a lamentable loss. The thing that's happened as well is you've seen this real freak situation whereby the Europeans from von der Leyen, through to Macron, to Merz in Germany, all of these guys, they're just gagging for more war. They
Yeah,
want
it
more
seems like
war.
it.
Yeah, and I get like satanically evil because surely we would want peace. And however imperfect the peace is, it's better than human life being lost. But so I oppose the war. I don't take a side as such, apart from the side of peace. But I do understand the dilemma that Putin was put in, and I think Zelensky's a fraud and a grifter, and there'll never be peace while he is president of.
Well, he was an entertainer or a comedian or
Because he
something
was Canadian.
before a
Yeah,
politician.
so he knows how to play a role. So he's played this. He's playing a role, but it's the it's the cream of young Ukrainian men. It's been wiped out. I mean, basically, it's 1916 all over again when the cream young men from the UK went off to fight in Flanders and elsewhere,
Yeah.
including my great great grandfather, and they never came back. And that's what's happening right across the piece in eastern Ukraine. So it's a tricky one, but it is, as you say, it was you had to change your icon on your profile to Slava Ukraini. And yeah, I'm not doing that.
Ironically, I remember seeing the photographs of Boris in Ukraine. There's a few things, but I'll come back to Boris in a minute. I remember thinking your country's at war here, but here's you and your wife doing magazine photo shoots, advertising watches, drinking champagne, like.
Mhm.
And every time he goes, Zelensky, the other photo shoot, I think it was before Trump got re-elected. He was at, I think it was one of the G7s,
Yeah,
maybe something, and
yeah,
he was like the kid no one wanted to talk to and his green fatigues, and they just left him, and he had a face like thunder. But
yeah.
going back to the Boris thing, Boris went to Ukraine in a suit and his traditional blue conservative tie. Okay, cool. Bringing us up to authoritarian the UK.
Yeah,
When he went to Bristol, or was it Birmingham, he had a stab vest on.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the
But when
point.
he goes to a war zone, he's just got his suit.
Yeah, yeah.
Goes to a city in his home country, crap, I better put a stab vest on. Like,
There's
what
another.
message does that put out? Like,
But Boris Johnson was a monumental fraud as well. Like we shouldn't forget that this is the guy that postured as a kind of latter day Churchill at the back end of 2019 to get himself elected. And the bit thing that I really can't forgive is like a lot of people invested a lot of hope in him in December of 2019 when the Tories got this landslide win. And 12 weeks later, he'd locked us down. He'd done more to take away our freedom than Hitler did. So, I view Boris Johnson with absolute contempt, absolute contempt. And I mean, over those couple of years, I mean, my view is now, I mean, where you might have seen the world between, oh, well, the Conservatives are better than Labour, maybe. I now view, no, no, it's a uni party. They're all the same. And Johnson was as much of a menace as Tony Blair or any of the rest of them, and all parts in between. And that's why we've ended up, the country is now the UK is this kind of global laughing stock where, as we've seen even today, people like Graham, what's his
Graham Linehan was
name?
arrested for
Arrested
tweets.
for 3 tweets. when he arrived at Heathrow Airport. And
5 armed police arrested him for
yeah,
tweeting something, questioning. I got to get the terminology right, but I think he was questioning trans ideology or something like that.
he was
But
trans.
5 armed police, what was he doing? Smuggling guns? No. Drugs? No.
No, I mean,
Like
he's a
nothing.
genuine guy. I met Graham. He came over here to Northern Ireland for one of the Posey Parker, Let Women Speak rallies.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean.
I met him at that, and I found him to be an eminently decent chap who's had a lot of, because he's taken a trans critical view and been very public about it in the entertainment field. I mean, he lost his career, he lost kind of everything. But
Mm.
but but that example for being arrested for tweets, as you say, like that's Britain 2025. The same Britain that didn't. Uh, Keir Starmer, when he met with uh, President Trump up in Scotland,
Said we have free speech.
we have free speech.
Of course we do.
It's a
But we'll put you in prison if you disagree.
that's right. Best meme ever, that one.
That
Yeah,
really is. I did see that one.
yeah,
I found it very funny because I did see when Trump was in Scotland,
yeah.
um, Bev Turner, I think it was from GB News, was asking questions, and Starmer was sort of like the parent trying to subtly tell the child off in front of the other parent, being Trump,
Yeah.
and sort of like, no, Bev, don't mention that. And it was like he did. I've never seen anyone look so uncomfortable.
Oh, he did. He looked. He looked. It was total cringe. And
And I reckon Trump knew. Trump knew.
oh yeah, oh he did. And I thought Beverly Turner. I mean, I have issues with GB News, but Beverly, and there's other ones as well, do a really good job on GB News, and she did a great job because Starmer just was. He was out of his depth. He was sitting beside President Trump in his full throttle, and he couldn't control Trump. So it was wonderful. That was one of the highlights of the year, actually. That press conference, I loved that. Watched it all.
So speaking of Starmer, as the case may be, people have thrown around the term two-take here, free gig here, all that sort of stuff. What do you think about the Ricky Jones, Lucy Connolly situation?
Right. Okay. So that's a good question. So what I think is, first of all, Lucy Connolly should never again have been given a 3-year prison sentence for what was, let's face it, no worse than an injudicious, intemperate tweet, and we've all done that. I've done
We've all said stuff in the heat of the moment, and
it.
she, unlike, sorry, just to interject, like the difference is, if you say something in the heat of the moment when you're angry, you can't delete it. Those people will remember that. At least she deleted it.
It did. Within 3 hours. Within
Yeah,
three.
within 3 hours. She reflected on it, and I think she probably walked the dog or something, and then deleted it.
Yeah, that's right. And she did say, I think she did put a couple of words in it which were a caveat as well. But
Yeah,
didn't matter. They wanted to make, she was used along with a few others to as an example to be so to scare everybody from saying. So she went up. I opposed that. Now Ricky Jones, because that's the other one. So Ricky Jones again publicly did that, and so
we have to cut their throats. I think the video is, isn't it? Yeah.
now you know, I think if you're being consistent and logical, you'd say, well, it was a very injudicious thing for him to say, and
Mm.
maybe he deserved a warning of some sort. But should he go to prison for that? I mean, he wasn't. Did he tell people to go and slit the throats of others? I'm not sure that he did, and so I do believe in maximum free speech. He's definitely Lucy Connolly. I think, as you say, is very different.
Mm.
But then you see, it's the context as well. The context was Lucy Connolly was dispatched to prison within, like, what was it, a week or so. It happened
Yeah,
really quick.
very quickly.
Ricky Jones is taken over a year to get to court, and then I think it was a jury, wasn't it? I think a jury, but
I think it was a jury, but I'm sure someone will fact check us.
I think you'll find that it was a jury, but if also I think if you check the demographic of the area from which the jury members were drawn, that might have been quite helpful to Ricky as well. But
Mm.
I just want a country where we're not locked up for saying stuff. I mean, incitement is the tricky one. So free speech, this, that, and the other. But incitement is an offence. It is a criminal offence if you incite, and so I think people do need to be a wee bit careful. But broadly speaking, say what you want. You should be able to say what you want. But as we've just said there a minute or two ago, anyway, Graham Linehan said the most harmless stuff, but it was transcritical. So he's been arrested by
Yes,
these.
it's shocking, absolutely shocking.
Yeah, yeah, and also, we've seen it in the past, what, couple of days, people being arrested for flying the English flag, St George's flag. I did a thing today about some chap was stopped by the police for beeping his horn. There was he approached a roundabout which had again the English flag had been written on the roundabout. He beeped, and the police pulled him in to have a kind of a threatening chat with him. So it's like we're just slipping, I think, honestly, into more and more authoritarianism under Starmer. And it's scary because I don't know where it goes and I don't know how it ends.
Well, they're all Fabians, aren't? Well, I say
Oh,
they're all. I can't
nearly, yeah,
tar them all with the same brush, but the majority, it
already.
has been proven
Yep.
and admitted to, are Fabians. And I did some research and I wrote a piece on Substack. There's my plug about that. Um, and it's shocking, really. They believe in borderless, like destroy
Yep.
the nation, import people from other parts of the world, which ironically seems to be what's going on.
Yeah.
I did write a speculative piece. Like I studied quite a bit of history when I was younger. It was one of my sort of passions. Maybe I should have done that at university instead of nursing. Um,
Mm.
but I remember the Roman, just roll with me on this a little bit. So the Roman Empire would hire mercenaries from the farthest regions of the empire. They would put them in barracks. They would give them a salary, and whatever they did to the local area, it'd be like, "What are you complaining for? This is for the they're here for the glory of Rome."
Yeah.
Right. So Starmer's allowing people from all over the world to
Hmm.
come here.
Hmm.
They're all fighting age men. I haven't seen any families, and I've covered two protests. Um, they're being put up in hotels, which one could argue are like barracks. They're being fed, they're being given money.
Yep.
Unlike the Roman Empire days, they've been given a smartphone as well. And they go out and commit crimes in the local area, and
Yep.
nothing seems to be done about it. I mean, there was that chap was it last week, week before, who just let himself into some woman's house. And
Down in,
then the police took
yep.
him back to the hotel, but arrested the people that stopped him.
Yes.
Like, what are you doing?
Yep, that's right. No, no, the analogy with Rome is a good one, actually, Dean. That's a good historical analogy. A lot of us think that it's very strange that, I mean, we've got, what is it, 52,000 have come in the past year. 52,000, right? Of these
Mm,
fighting age. And, um, that seems to be like the annual number that come. So we must have, the British Army is 85,000 people. There's more than that in terms of these. And I did a thing on this earlier. I was thinking about it. I call them illegal migrants. The
yeah.
Stormer likes to call them irregular migrants, but neither of those words is right.
My local press are still calling them asylum seekers. I'm
Oh,
like, why is France
wrong.
at war? I
No,
know that I've used that term a lot. People have used that term a lot, but is France at war? No. Is Europe at war with each other? No. Why are they coming to the UK?
they are invaders. That's the tough word to use. This is an invasion, but unlike any in our history, it's one that the government's good with. The government is happy with these people invading our country, and I put a piece out myself there in Substack yesterday about the hotels, and I completely get that the hotels should all be closed. But if the hotels are closed, I fear that they'll scatter them into houses.
Yeah, of course.
And so, like, the cancer is spread from one area to all parts of the body. So the only way out of it is that I think you close the hotels, you close the houses of multiple occupancy, you put them somewhere with security around it until you can put them on the first boat back to where they all came from, which is France. People say,
Hmm.
"Oh, but I mean, even reform." I mean, I'm not that impressed with the foreign policy. They're going
No.
to back to Eritrea or Somalia or wherever it is. Well, you ask these guys where you come from, and they're going to say, "Yeah, I'm Somalian." Yeah, no, their passports are at the bottom of the English Channel.
Yeah, of course.
So there's no, but we know they came from France, and France is not a war zone. So, I mean, I would declare a national emergency in the Channel. I would declare France a hostile nation, and I would deport everything to France. If we don't do that, it's going to get really tricky because there are hundreds of thousands of these people, and they haven't come here for the climate. You know,
It's
they're
warmer in their own country, I would assume.
country, but it's heating up here with them present.
So, do you think? So you've been doing this longer than me and involved in this sort of thing longer than me. So,
Yeah,
in your opinion, do you think it's a lack of? Is it a lack of political will, or do you think it's like by design? Because, and the reason I ask that, and this is going to sound a little bit conspiratorial, we know that Starmer's a Fabian. We know that he loves Europe, and and this has been referenced in one of my earlier videos as well. When he was asked Westminster or Davos, he didn't even blink. Davos.
yeah,
And there's a lot of conspiracies about the WEF. We all know that,
yeah,
but it just seems funny. This guy's a Fabian. He loves Europe, and now this as well. It's like,
yeah.
is it a lack of will, do you think, or is it by design?
It's all by design. Anyone who thinks it's anything than that is completely naive. And even yesterday, Parliament comes back, and the number one issue is obviously the immigration issue. And Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, stands up and says, "Yeah, we're definitely going to deal with this, and we're going to deal with this
When?
by we're going to bring in Gazans. We haven't got enough of the Gazans here in the UK, so we're going to bring them and their families to study, and then the whole. So
That's it, to study nursing and things like that.
yeah, and I mean, I see this as it's I mean it's not stupidity. It's much worse. And I think, and I read your article in the Fabians. It
Thank
does
you.
link into that agenda, and that's a dark agenda
Mm,
that they're pursuing. And so it's almost like, Dean, and I can't think any other way of saying this. They delight in rubbing our noses in it.
mm,
If you wanted to diffuse the situation, you wouldn't say, "Yeah, we're sorting out immigration by bringing Gazans here." You wouldn't say that. But if you have a nefarious agenda that really you want to collapse the UK, it's exactly what you would do. It's exactly what you would say, and that's where we are with this lot. So that's why I think that I know the next general election is 2029, and my view is that if Labour last that long, we're finished. uh, Something's going to give. And what it is, I don't know, but something's going to give because you can't keep this fever pitch atmosphere. You've been, because I know you were saying you've been to cover a couple of the protests.
yeah, I have, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been to any protests, although in Northern Ireland we have a protest as well.
Well,
But
I did see the effigies on fire
oh, that was good.
in Northern Ireland.
Love
Yeah,
that. Yeah, that was
that
hateful.
sent a message more than a protest would, I think.
That was one of the most iconic images, and I know where that is. That bonfire with the dinghy, with the dummy, and then people were saying it's a hate crime. It's a hate crime. It was dummies. It was
Yeah,
dummies
I remember someone said that to me. It was like, oh, that's racist and a hate crime. I was like,
against
what? Racist against dummies?
against dummies. Is that what it is? So and so I think, I mean, you've been to these demos. I mean,
I
what's
interviewed one of the organizers actually.
and what is the emotions like? What's the feeling like when you're there?
You know what? The first one I went to, it was just when I started writing. Um, so I was a sort of wet behind the ears, if you will. I hadn't really got used to talking to people on camera and things like that, and I was more writing then than sort of this.
Yeah.
Um, Initially, I went over to the counter protesters. I would say they were maybe 10% of what the actual protesters were in number,
Mhm.
but none of them would talk to me. Um, I got called a few different names, and I was like, "Dude, I just want to know why you're here. Like, I write. Like, tell me why you're here." No. I got verbally abused by some guy with sunglasses, a hood up, and a mask. I was like, "Well, I know people are instantly going to say Antifa. Can't prove that they were part of Antifa, but that seems to be the blanket term for people like that. Counter protesters who mask up. Okay, would not talk to me. They were waving. It was in Norwich. It was opposite the Brook Hotel. They were, ironically, they were waving a trans flag or the inclusion flag or whatever it's called. I say
Yeah.
whatever it's called, not to be disrespectful, but I
Mm.
cannot keep up.
Mm.
The rainbow flag with the triangle on it.
Yeah, I know that one. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I don't know which one it is, but it was that one that they were waving that. They were waving a communist hammer and sickle. Sorry, like the Soviet hammer and sickle. And unite the union. Someone was waving a flag for a work union. Now, my first thought was, shouldn't a union protect your rights at work and not be a demonstration? I don't know enough about what their options are, things like that. However, when I went across the road to speak to the protesters, all right, mate, how are you? I was like, I don't even know who you are. He was like, no, no, but thanks for coming. I was like, dude, I'm just here to write about it. He was like, right, speak to that guy and that guy. They'll tell you everything you want to know. And
Mm.
that guy up there is the guy that organised it, and he wants to speak to as many people as possible. He was like, people say far right or whatever. I'll tell you what, they were really welcoming. They were really friendly. I was there for a good 4 hours, and they were still there when I left, and I left because it was pouring down with rain. The second one I went to, I didn't see any counter protesters. If they were there, I didn't see them. Um, oh, sorry, just to go back, the first one, um, two masked people tried to start trouble and were pushed away by this tsunami of protesters. I was stood on the pavement, and there was that many people. It was just like a sea of people pushing this protester and his friend away. There's a video of it circulating where, if you watch it long enough, the police and the protester roll down a hill next to the road. Norfolk's finest, bless them. The second one I went to, just to go back to that, it was like a festival. Like, people were waving flags, people were singing Sweet Caroline, people were dancing, hugging, like, and a few people I bumped into while I was there who I've known for a while. You had millionaires talking to people in wheelchairs, people who would never engage normally, like,
Yeah,
because they're from just different backgrounds.
yeah.
You had business owners I know, who were talking to people who can't work. You had kids chanting Keir Starmer's a wanker. Like, God, you're about 10, but you're chanting that. Like, it was just
Mm.
one of those festival style atmospheres. People were singing. They had protesters going around with black bags picking up the rubbish.
Mm.
They had to make sure there was nothing left there. They were singing "Rule Britannia." Like, they were like, it was very. I know the term's a bit loaded at the minute, but the feeling I got was like, think of like a patriotic festival,
Yeah.
and they weren't just white people. There was a Jamaican chap there.
Mm.
There was a Muslim chap
Mm.
who got up on stage and talked about how he's worried about immigration. He came to the UK legally. As he put it, I did everything properly, and I'm worried for my kids now.
Yeah.
That's sort of my experiences of it
Mm.
in Norfolk. I
Mm.
don't know what any other experiences have been. Like, I haven't been to Epping and stuff like that yet. Um, but I can't say that it was a negative environment. The only negativity I got was that, because I was a white chap asking questions, the counter protesters wouldn't give me the time of day. And actually,
Mm.
were quite verbally abusive.
Mm. Mm. So it's interesting because going back to that Let Women Speak rally that I was at with Graham Linehan in Belfast, I remember there was just like normal women wanting to get up and speak about their right to their private spaces and all of that. And there was a small but very vocal group of protesters, and they were flying the trans flag, and they were flying the sickle, the communist flag as well, and there was unison. I believe this is all a George Soros Open Society funded up, which runs not just in the UK, but it runs in other places as well. And so they're funded and they're organized, but they're a bunch of cards and they're fifth columnists. And you go to Epping, or indeed even Canary Wharf, and you've got like the pink ladies and whatnot, which I think is a genius move, because you get images of lots of women and kids, and that doesn't really look like a bunch of Nazis. No matter how they
No,
try to portray it, it looks like just ordinary concerned people concerned for their communities. And why wouldn't they be with these migrant hotels full of nefarious characters? So, I'm watching it all with great interest. And again, just to your description of what it was like at the protest you were at, I remember being in Trafalgar Square last summer when Tommy Robinson, the rally happened, one of his rallies, and that
yeah,
that was a big one. And it was the same thing. It was there was all kinds of people there, different ethnicities and whatnot. They were singing songs. It was like a carnival. It was a party atmosphere. You know,
Yeah.
this was not the Third Reich in the center. Well, in the center, it was actually it was a sunny day. I remember that vividly. It was good atmosphere. Everyone had a ball, and we all left happy. And I compare that happiness that comes from the more patriotic side with the misery, Dean, the misery and negativity of the so-called protesters, and it's quite telling.
So I know you've given me quite a bit of your time at the minute. I seem to wrap up all my interviews like this, but just one final thing. You've touched on it earlier.
Yep,
Um, you said you're not quite sure about reform.
yep.
Why not?
Well, number one,
After the uni party that we've had for so long, sorry,
yeah.
why not reform? Or would you prefer Ben Habib get in, or do you believe in Rupert Lowe for the UK?
Well, I don't believe in any politician. That's the first thing. Don't follow leaders. That's the second thing. But when it comes to reform, I've got a couple of issues with reform, fundamental issues. Nigel Farage has talked about the need to leave the ECHR for
Hmm.
Great Britain, England, Scotland, Wales. And he has on the record said that Northern Ireland would not be part of that initially. We would have to stay in the ECHR so that the Belfast Agreement, Good Friday Agreement would not be undermined. So in doing that, he is splitting us off from the rest of the UK. Now, I'm outraged at that. And people over here are. He will get no votes. Well, he probably won't put up candidates, but he wouldn't get any votes from any unionists because we see him for. Hang on a second. He's also said things like he's not, he thinks a United Ireland might happen. And these are not things that I would expect a leader of the United Kingdom to say. So that's my first criticism of Nigel Farage. Second thing is Nigel flip flops on all the issues. Back in early January, Elon Musk called him out when he said, "You're not the man that we need." And this was over the rape gang inquiries and Tommy Robinson. And
That's
whether
it.
you like Tommy Robinson or not is neither here nor there. Tommy Robinson has been treated very badly by the establishment, Dean, and I do know Tommy. And I think that Nigel has been incredibly mean spirited by calling the 100,000 people in Trafalgar Square last summer that lot. So
Oh yeah, we don't want to be associated with that lot.
snobbish, elitist, saying sound bites that aren't thought through. Here's the thing: there's great people in reform. The rank and file, I know loads of them, and they're great people, and they obviously have put their faith in the leadership of Nigel Farage and Zia Youssef. I think the UK does need change for definite, definite. We need to smash the uni party. Whether reform is that vehicle or not, I'm really not so sure. Ben Habib's Advance UK has the advantage of Elon Musk saying join them. They're Nigel is weak sauce and Ben's not. I know Ben as well, and in a
I'm
way,
due to meet Ben later this month.
yeah, he's a lovely guy. He's a really good guy, and I mean, he gets the issues. He's also, I might say, a very humble guy. He listens, which Nigel Farage doesn't. So, but look, let's not overly obsess in the sort of reform or not reform. We're going to have change by 2029,
Right.
definitely. Definitely. It might be in the short term, but in the next year, I think. Actually, I do think next May you're going to see a absolute um, a dramatic event here when the Scottish and Welsh Assembly elections happen, and I think reform will storm it. I actually think that, and that'll be good because that will destroy Starmer and Badenoch. So that'll be good to see that. And then what happens then after 26 and 29? Let's wait and see. Maybe Advance UK will take over. Maybe reform will toughen up a bit. We'll wait and see. But smash the uni party and bring our freedoms back, Dean. That's what we need. And it ain't going to happen. I think it's going to happen from the people up, not the politicians
Not
down.
the top down. Yeah.
Yeah, not the top down. And what I love at the moment is you can feel it in your bones, can't you? Um,
Yeah.
Norwich, Epping, Canary Wharf, everywhere. I see so much stuff. Thank goodness for social media. You see all this. You see this brilliant display of patriotism across England and even in Scotland. I've seen the saltires out and stuff. And well, we always have flags out here in Northern Ireland. We're way ahead of you guys in that. But it's great to see it. And as I said at the beginning of this, I started into this because I have a love and a belief in the historical significance and meaning of the United Kingdom, and that's what I do in my own unique, kind of curious way. Do my best to stand up for.
Wonderful. What a great way to finish. David Vance, thank you.
Thank you very much.